So what are the risks and possible problematic moments now? This is maybe the most terrible thing and most important thing I would like to tell is that we do not have enough rehabilitation centers, and certainly we do not have exit programs for survivors. And the risk here is that we will have these programs aimed at survivors of rapes from Russian soldiers, of other types of violence, gender-based violence, but not for survivors of prostitution. And this is very important that we do integrate exit programs as a part of rehabilitation programs. We are trying to work hard to make it happen. And the next problem is the polarization of attitudes to prostitution. You know, we are not talking about prostitution as a violation of women's rights. Ukrainian society are talking about prostitution whether as a shame for women, whether as a right for women. So men are invisible, still invisible in this conversation. And it doesn't even matter if you leave a comment about deems or somebody else, the discussion will always come to discussing women engaged in the prostitution. So it stops us from doing what we need to stop the demand. And there is emphasis on warnings on trafficking for labor exploitation, which is related that some organizations in Ukraine are mostly dealing with labor exploitation, and they have good connections with our state authorities, and they have the possibility to talk in mass media and to make public speeches, and they are talking about men. And this is really, really a shame as for me, because when I open a video which is named like helping Ukrainian refugees to avoid human trafficking, and when a representative from international organizations talks about men and helping men, and we know that 90% of refugees are women and children, this is really strange. And this is really not the way it should be, when we should focus on real potential victims, at least when we are talking about victims. And of course, we understand that men also can be victims, but in this situation, we should talk about men. We should talk about sexual exploitation, not making too much emphasis on the labor exploitation, which is really not so relevant in this situation of war that we have now. And of course, it's much easier to talk about enemies and blame enemies, for example, Russian soldiers, than it's to blame, for example, Ukrainian soldiers with the same crime, or Europeans, because Ukrainian soldiers are protecting Ukraine. So it's really hard to have a conversation in the public sphere that, yes, there is exploitation of women among Ukrainian soldiers. There is exploitation of Ukrainian women and refugees and girls in Europe. Because it's much easier to say that, yes, we will see crimes and punish Russian soldiers as an enemy. But we should talk about all the cases, not only about crimes committed by the enemy. And we still have poor understanding of what fighting demand is. And as I should say, it's not only the fault of our state institutions. It's very strange, but I analyzed documents and recommendations issued by several very famous and very reliable organizations from the Europe, for example, Greta or OSCE or European Union. And I was trying to find there something about fighting demand, some actual recommendations related to how can we stop demand. And also some of these organizations have really good documents adopted, other documents related to fighting demand and conventions. In those documents related to Ukraine, no actual measures of fighting demand were mentioned, or at least listed, or at least given any reference to other documents. So we actually don't have anything to stop and to show our government as an example. For example, I would say that you can see this Greta recommendations. Please see, they do recommend us fighting demand, but what do they mean by it? giving information and helping to survivors. These are not measures of fighting demand, it's other things. And it's a pity we don't have it in official documents. And the last, at least what I can say, it's a lack of experts on combating sexual exploitation. We do have a lot of great and prominent gender experts, and some experts, for example, Maria Dmitrieva, which you, I think, know, they do specialize in combating sexual exploitations, but there are not too many of them. There are really several people, and people who actually specialize on even on gender-based violence or violence, sexual violence. They do not have enough expertise on sexual exploitation issues, and that's make them actually avoid this topic during any courses, presentations, webinars.